Hello, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and welcome to the HR or Human Relations Management series you're taking me with. Today, you're either taking me online, a face-to-face class, or a hybrid class, or in one of my workshops. Today, we're going to be talking about establishing pay structure. HR is basically one of the individuals or resources for many small to medium and large organizations to make sure that I'm paying the employees the right amount the right amount for the services they're providing me as an organization. The pay makes a big difference. It helps in motivating. It helps in retaining employees, and it helps for promotion. It helps coming up good ideas. That's the side on the employees. On the flip side, as a business owner, I want to get the right employee with the right job specification, right qualifications for the best price that's out there in the market. And how do I know? I have to look at other markets, see what other people are paying the same uh, job title that I am looking at. What are they requiring? So this way, the individuals, not only does he or she develop themselves and could take those skills, I understand that, someplace else, but if I, or I could bring individuals that had the skills from other corporations or other industries that will meet my needs as I need now. But pay is important, even though we've learned through Maslow and we've learned through Herzberger that pay is basically a hygiene factor. It is not a motivator. It is a motivator to a point. And when they say motivator to a point is once I get my raise and my pay and I get it at the beginning of the year, it may not motivate me for the whole year. But it is an important aspect. If I'm not getting paid fairly, I may not be as motivated or I may not want to stay with the organization. On the flip side, if I'm paying too much for a service or a process or for a service because of the job title and job specification, I, as an organization, as a business, are losing money because it's cutting into my profitability. All right, so I want to pay the fair price for the right individual and pay him or her the right amount to keep them happy, but also so I could be sustainable in my operation and also that I can make a profit and be profitable going forward. So let's talk about we'll go real quickly on the overview. But if you're taking me in any of those classes or workshops, you already have access to my conceptual map. The concept maps are there as a reminder. After we go through the lecture, there's more reading material that I supply, but when you look at this, it gives you a general overview. So, hey, I didn't think about this, or I read this. Now it kind of makes sense. Oh, now I see how the whole thing. So if I'm looking at why pay, establishing pay structure is important, just by looking at this real first level of my conceptual map, with a decision about pay, how much should I pay, and employees thinking how much am I worth, issues developing the pay structure, that's kind of hard because I don't want to spend too much for the employee, but I don't want to spend too little where I get only the bottom of the barrel. I want to find that in-between person, in-between level of pay that I could get, not the real low or not the real high. If I want those expertise, then I'm paying the high price. If I'm looking at the sports, if I want the best quarterback, I got to pay the money. But if I just want a leader or a manager or everyday worker, I don't want the lowest. I may not want the highest. I want the person in between because through my developmental and everything else, the training and everything else, I'll develop that person. So I willing to bring him in. Now the other thing is if I'm bringing in an employee that already has a skill set or doing a similar job at another at one of my competitors or another company or out of state that's moving in here, I want to make sure that I capture him or her and that he or she feels comfortable working for me, that it's a fair pay, that the work they're doing is rewarded properly, and I'm not taking an advantage of them. That also, if I pay the employee well and treat him well, that also minimizes any kind of unionization. I'm not against unionization, trust me. I came from a union, but I just want to say, as a business, I'm trying to keep my costs down and have more control. And then I may be in an area that. I have a lot of non-union members, and I have to compete with that. I'm a small business; I have no choice. Okay, so let's look about pay. So we're going to talk about the different job structure, the pay rates, the pay differences, alternative to job-based pay, and actual pay, and current pay issues. So if I'm looking at an overview, remember you already have you're exposed to my conceptual maps. if you're taking me in any of my classes or in my workshops, I always supply that with additional reading and handouts. Decision in establishing pay structure, legal requirements for pay policy. There's a minimum amount I have to pay the individual. There's certain benefits that I have to do. Certain amount of hours. Do I pay him time and a half, a time and a quarter, or whatever? Depends on the laws and the structures of the state where you're working at. And over the, because some of the federal law may have these guidelines. If you're in the Chicago area or in certain suburbs, they may have, if you want to work in that area or operate a business, they may have requirements, legally requirements for doing business in that community, but has maybe $1 more or 50 cents more than what the minimum wage is. And that could be because it makes sense for that area to retain and bring people into that area with the job skills that I'm looking for. How do employees evaluate fairness in pay structures? How organizations design pay structures related to the jobs. Every job is different. A lot of times when you're looking at what's going to happen is with the job description, job specification, I could be a secretary, but in the reality, I'm an administrative secretary. I'm a secretary 1, secretary 2. So I may get different pays depending on longevity, how long I've been there, depending on seniority, depending on experiences. But when I start adding and changing that basic job descriptions, it's hard for me to compare apples with apples. I'm comparing apples and oranges. Because a lot of times you have some people, because of the job title, they're basically just a secretary, answering or administrator, answering the phone, doing very little, and they're paying $25 an hour. Or an administrative assistant does the typing, does the answering the phone, does some empower, does some small decision making, keeps the office running, and I maybe only have to pay her $19 an hour. So there's a $6 savings from what I'm paying. I'm going, hey, wait a minute, maybe I'm paying that individual too much, but maybe the higher pay makes sense to retain the good individual. Remember? So there's a balance. You always have to evaluate your pay structures, and every now and then check against the benchmark. What are the large corporations doing? What are other corporations doing to retain individuals? Because we're all pulling from the same workforce, for lack of better words. And sure, it's in line with the pay structure, paying employees serving military, and paying executives. A lot of different issues. I'm just going to give you a general idea that you understand a salary employee is paid a little differently than an hourly employee, and a middle manager is paid a little different because he gets a lot more, he or she gets bonuses, gets some other kind of perks that they may not give to the salary employee. Okay, now when I look about decision pay, I look at the job structure, relative pay for different jobs within an organization. Very easy. I look at the pay level, average amount organization pays for a particular job. Remember, you don't want to have, for lack of a better word, someone that's doing maintenance, in basic maintenance, such as cleaning up and tidying up, making more than my sales rep because I pay it as a flat fee or a salary. So you want to make sure there's a difference between on the complexity of the job, the pay should be paying more. Okay? Look, a surgeon gets paid a lot more than a general practitioner. He or she has higher risk. He or she needs a different type of a skill set to be able to perform surgery versus a general practitioner who just has to have a general knowledge. Okay, so now when I look at different pay structures, pay level decisions resulting from job structures, pay level decisions, I'm looking at what time do I insert a raise, a promotion, a bump? When do I upgrade the individual's pay? I know most companies, once you get your pay and you're in there, it's either cost of living or inflation rate or something. But is there anything else that we should be changing? Don't leave the same pay structure always and never look at it. That'd be like buying insurance and never checking out. So maybe I could get a better deal with another insurance company because we always did it this way. That is not how you become an effective and sustainable business going forward. And HR is the vital element of any company, looking at different pay structures, looking at different job descriptions, and saying, hey, maybe we should arrange it. Pay them about I could put two jobs together and pay 50 cents more, and I may be saving $1, $2 if I had two individuals. I'm not trying to rip off anyone. I'm trying to do it with the motivation. I'm seeing what the industry my industry or what others are paying and what is fair, because that's what the employee is looking at. When I'm bringing it in there, I don't want to be too high because I'm paying more than what I deserve or what I need. And we wouldn't do it as a consumer if we're buying something I don't need that type of service. Why am I paying? That's a big issue with bundling. Why do I bundle? I don't use half the programs, but the only way I could get the discounts, I got to bundle in. There's some savings, but then there's that differential of cost. No different when you buy a product or a service. What's that next level for me to jump up? Okay, issues in developing. You got legal issues, and there's a lot of them. You got minimum wage. You got equal pay for equal work. I won't worry about that. Not based on differences in pay, on age, sex, or race, other protected status. Okay, difference in pay, business-related considerations, responsibilities, or performance. If I'm looking at pay, what I pay, if I am a multinational, or let's say I'm a corporation, I got different offices all over the United States. I know the cost of living in Tennessee is a lot less than the cost of living in New York, where everything's condensed, and just to get an apartment may cost me $15,000 just for a studio, or for $15,000 I could get a couple acres down in Tennessee for the same amount of money, so or even less. So I have to make sure that my pay structure makes sense for the area that the individuals that I want to retain the good employees. Okay, so that takes care of this. Minimum wage, lowest amount that employees may pay. Remember, I hate to tell this, but as an employee, when I offer jobs for my salary employees, as engineers or salespeople, I know the pay range where I'm getting from. I, as a business, just like as a consumer, will try to get the lowest price for the best for my lowest price with the highest quality employee. So if the employee is not sharp enough or doesn't understand the pay, I'm not taking advantage of them. I'm not ripping them off or her off, but I'm looking at the middle and say, here's where I want to pay. All right. So we have that, and then we have the when I look at the FLA, Fair Labor Standards Act, federal law that establishes minimum wages. No child law, permits for lower training, workers under 20. Up to 90 days, approximately 85% of minimum wage. Okay, so workers under 20, up to 90 days, approximately 85% of minimum wages. Okay, some states have higher minimum wages, and I talked that a little bit in the what do you call it, introducing the chapter. Definition: overtime rate, 1.5 times. Now, overtime rate's usually for salary. Sometimes I may have, because my management has to work so hard, or my management has a lot of my management has a lot of responsibilities, and they're doing a lot of overtime, and I just don't want to pay them salary, so I may pay them time and a quarter, and they're looking, because really by the law I do not have to pay them overtime, but because there's such a demand on them, I don't want to pay them like for 40. Usually when I'm doing salary, these flights, there's no overtime. You would expect that they would work overtime, maybe 10 hours. That should be, without being paid overtime, compensated into the pay structure. But if I'm working in 30 hours, I'm doing just a service to that individual. Okay, so when is required, expected, anytime over 40 hours? Those are the laws. Exempt managers, outside salespeople, other employees not covered, by the federal guidelines. But remember, a lot of companies are playing games. They made everyone like your team player, but you're not really a manager. You're a salary person just to get over for the overtime. Do not rip them off. As an HR representative, you say, yes, I know this is questionable, but if you're not sure, you could find out through the agency, or always go on the side of giving back, so you're not ripping off your employees. You want your employees as your major assets. You don't want to upset them or have them leave. And non-exempt employees that are covered. Okay, restriction. Child labor. I'm not going to get into involved too much. 16 ages and 17. You could get someone under 14, 15 with a permit. A lot of companies, maybe small mom and pop, will do that because they don't want larger companies, it's too much of an issue. They got to be home at this time or that time. So they hire them around 16. Plus, they're a little more mature at 16 and 17 than I would something 14 and 15. Now, underage may not be employed in any work associate exemptions, including babysitting, acting, delivering newspapers. And a lot of times when you look at this child labor law, if I'm a sole proprietor working my own business, my kids could work in there. I may be paying something out because they're part of the family. It's not like I'm hiring someone else out. They're just part of the operation. operation. If you look at a lot of Chinese restaurants, or if you look at a lot of Indian operations where it's a family ordeal, a little different. So the law is a little different if it's my own family members working with me versus if I'm hiring someone 14, 13. That's what they call child labor law. Okay, and you got the two acts, the Davis-Bacon Act. You can look it up. And based under these laws, federal contractors must pay at least equal their employees' rate to the prevailing wages in the area. So it changes where I'm at. I can't use the same wage structure as I do in Tennessee as I would up in Chicago or in some of the northern states. And I use Boston as an example. What's the market forces? What are issues? We as a company, I'm trying to keep the costs down so I can sell my products profitably. Yet I must be able to attract workers in a competitive market. Competitors offer similar goods and services, compete on quality, services, and price. And labor is a significant part of an organizational cost. Labor markets must compete to obtain. There's only so many people in the labor market. Either I train them, I get them out of college, or I get them brand new. I'm a hair salon. I can't afford. I like to get somebody that's already experienced, but she wants more. But she also, I may pay her more, but she or he brings in their clientele. Or if I'm just starting off, I'll go right out of the school. Okay. Now, organizational goals, you look at an organization, high quality workforce, cost control. I still had to maintain the cost. I want the best, but I only have a limited revenues coming in, and I'm looking at my expense. I'm trying to find that balance. And that's part of HR, trying to help me find that balance to retain and keep employees. As I grow, I can probably pay them more or promote them more. Okay, and equality and fairness and legal compliance. Pay policy, different pay grades be equal. You don't want any kind of discrimination or that I'm paying someone more. There's laws against that. Different pay ranges and pay differentials. All right, so that takes care of that one. Let's move over here so you can see a little bit. Level of pay, and this one's another one that's kind of good. Deciding what to pay, and that's something, by the market. Always got to look at the market. I'm looking at engineers. I may only want to pay $30,000, but $30,000 gets me the low or the bottom of an engineer. The ones that are getting the C's and the D's just barely got it. I want the average person, or I want the extra. If I'm some company, I'm looking stress and quality, or my work is very dependent on it, that the engineer or the sales force has this expertise, that's what I want. Okay, and then information on pay market. I could, benchmarking. I benchmark against the best companies. I do pay surveys. I do trade and industry group, professional groups. Bureau of Labor Statistics is a good resources. Society for Management Resources, and I've always supplied this site in work data. Employee equity. I want to be fair. Doing the right job, different job. So there is no differentiation. If I'm a house cleaner, I should be paid equally to all house cleaners if I'm the best. If I'm a surgeon, he or she should be making more. If I'm a sales manager, should be making more than your individual employees, even with the regular overtime, because why would I want to be promoted into the managerial position? Okay, and the job structure, job evaluations, administrative procedures, measuring relative internal worth, okay, and then I have compensatable factors, and then key jobs. I pay differently for key jobs, creating job structures, pay structures, and I do the research. Moving along pretty nicely here, okay. So now, what do we got? Pay rates. I could do by organization. I have to keep the data. Obtains pay survey data for key jobs, what's keeping them. Pay policies, remember you're going to do exit interviews, find out why people are leaving. If they're leaving because the pay is not good, I got to change something. I got to look at it, but I don't want to overpay them, I don't want to underpay them, all right? And then the process is basically a different job evaluation, look at the job structure, define the key jobs and what skill sets I need, look at the pay rate, the policy, the pay surveys, pay ranges, a set of possible pay rates defined by minimum and maximum and a midpoint. So this way I don't always have to promote them. I say, at this level, if you reach this expertise, I can move it up, or I can bring people from different jobs without worrying about the pay. So they're in this group. So my engineers and sales engineers may all be in one kind of a pay range. And then the red circles, pay at a rate that falls above the pay range of the job, and green circle, pay at a rate that falls below the pay range of a job. So you have the uppers and lower limits on that, okay? So that takes care of my pay rates. And now what do we have? Pay differentials, overview, adjustment of pay to differences for skill sets. If I have someone that's doing the same job, but she is bilingual, and I open it up, if anyone else is bilingual, to encourage bilingual individuals to come into my organization, I may pay that person more because I may be a shortage of Hispanics or people who speak Spanish, and my customer base is Spanish. They're all good, so I have to say, if you want the next job, if you speak Spanish, and you don't have to be a person from Mexico or from some of the Latin American countries that speak Spanish, you could have someone that learns Spanish but could be fluent enough to talk to the customer and everything else. If you look at a lot of our call centers, they're from India, and now they speak their dialect, their language, depending on the area, but they speak English fairly well, mostly pretty well. It's just they may have a little accent as Americans. So they're not Americans, where I say born in Americans, raised and only speak English. They're from India, but understand the language, and I may pay them a little bit more or less. Okay? And then the common approach on that is to move an employee to higher in the pay structure to compensate for a higher cost of living. That's when I have the range. If I have the range, you all have the same job, you're in the middle, but you're in Boston, and it's a higher cost of living, I'll pay you a little bit more. Okay, so I can adjust that. And then you come back and next job, so you fall into the level. So it's not a big shock from one to the other. You're still in the same pay range, and I just move along as it goes. It works a lot better. Alternative to pay base is derailing, and that's basically, if I'm looking at something like this, that's kind of this. Reducing the number of levels of organizational job structure. I don't need that many. It's easier to manage. Are combined to single layer, more assignments, broader grouping, on acquiring experience rather than promotion. So just the next, I can't promote. Remember, a lot of companies from HR, what's happening is that we are basically a flat organization. I don't have all those levels for promotion, but I want them to have the expertise to grow and motivate them and give them extra for the new knowledge that they're bringing into here. Okay, the next one, the pay structure and actual pay. Your overview. Pay structure represents the organizational policies. What the organization actually does may be different. Okay, and then the complement ratio is HR should compare actual pay to pay structure, making sure the policies match is the common way to do this. And complement ratio finding is the ratio average pay to the midpoint of a pay range. When you get all the rest of the math part of this course, there's a little more information. I'm just giving you an overview on this. If the average equals the midpoint is one level, if the average above is another greater than one, if the average is below, and it's a mathematical formula or that will be supplied if you're taking me on the class. This is just you already have that documentation. Okay. Now, current issues with pay. Paid during military duty. Remember, a lot of times I'd hire National Guards, and I figured they're always going to be here, but the National Guards now are activated because we're a voluntary force. So how do I handle employees? For military and extended times who are called for duties, right, there's the Uniform Service Employment and Reemployment Acts that ensures that active military, when they return, up to 5 years. Some will continue to get paid for the health insurance. Companies and military pay is a fraction of what the civilian earns. Some pay the difference while you're on there. Usually, a lot of them don't. They may do it for National Guards you're away, but if you're gone for 6 years, it's a cost. But if the company wants to do that, smaller companies they may do that. But a lot of companies usually that's not the case. They may provide the individual when he comes back. He or she he signed up, went to the military, and went active duty. They may say your seniority stays, or you had to drop at the bottom, but you still got a pay guaranteed. Usually, if you're drafted, you're there, or you're called out, and if they hire you, basically the seniority stays. They don't like to get into any issues with the federal government. Okay, and then while it's expensive, companies feel maintaining positive relationships with employees is a goodwill of the American public and make expense worthwhile. Remember, it's the PR things, okay? And then pay for the executive. This is a hard one. Equity pay equity theory suggests that the amount more that a CE, a company president or a high-level manager receives should be reflected in a greater impact in the organization. You know what I was making the decision? If the company's going down, there should not be no bonuses. That's what the problem a lot of the banking industry. They went under, we lost money, people lost money, and they're giving, Chase, JP Morgan, for lack of an example. And it could be justified. Maybe they own it. But look at the perception. Wait a minute, you lost some money, my savings went down, and you're giving the managers a raise? Bad PR. I'm not saying it's not right or wrong, but you have to look at that other aspect, okay? And how do employees feel? A lot of times, the executive makes millions of dollars, and the poor employees only making minimum wage, and it's because of the backs of the employees that executive is making it. So you should fair. If you look at the wages that the U.S. corporations are paying its executive, and you'd have the same job in China, India, you'd be like maybe, I want to say, I'm just off the back, 50% lower, if not lower, in the other countries. We overpay to our top executives. If they're worth it, pay them. But they should be accountable and should see that the company's making a high profitability. Otherwise, they're just like the employees. You didn't make it. All right? So basically, that's the whole thing of establishing pay structure from an HR perspective, small business, large businesses. Remember, the pay is what keeps employees, the pay is what motivates employees, and pay is what keeps employees unhappy, and pay is why employees leave. You want to be fair, equitable, but you don't want to give away the ship, or because they're an expense. Labor is the biggest expense. So anyway, this whole chapter is very interesting. Look at it, look at all the data, look at all the information, gives you general ideas. The one thing to remember, pay the individual fair. Don't overpay them, don't underpay them, and you'll do very well. And you'll respect, and most of your employees will stay there. If the employer wants too much, and you look in the market, hey, go find a job someplace else. There's no way I'm going to pay you double what the market or the larger or benchmark is. Okay? My name is Dr. George Mochocki, and welcome again. Thank you for taking this workshop with me, or taking me online, face-to-face, or a hybrid class. And I'll see you in our next section. Bye.